Ships are rising from the waters and the pirates of the Sea of Thieves must choose a side. But whatever you decide, it's always best to fully understand your faction. So today, I'll be telling you how I quickly rose in the ranks of my chosen alliance, all whilst taking on some pirate versus pirate action. I'm Captain Daddy and I hope you're prepared for this epic beginning to my Reaper journey. After waking in the local tavern, I quickly heard the news. An old fearsome pirate lord has returned, Flameheart. Apparently the Reapers had used these dolls in a ritual to bring him back from the Sea of the Damned. And if you remember from my previous tale, you'll know that I traded in some of these for a small profit. For this, I felt somewhat responsible and there was only one thing that I could do. I needed to learn much more about the Reapers, so I headed to their hideout. And whilst I was there, I heard much about the fabled pirate lord and the dealings of the Reapers. So I did what I had to, and I pledged myself for Flameheart. Only to be mocked and sent on my way. None of them knew me, and I realised then that I had to prove to them just how Reaper I can be. So I grabbed my emissary flag, jumped aboard my ship, lowered the sails and set out to show them my worth. Upon seeing no other vessels, I wanted to raise my status and show the seas that I was not to be messed with. Another Ashen Winds was on the horizon, so I headed there to better my emissary level, and to my surprise, I put up a much better fight than last time, beating this in 20 minutes rather than 50, while still not meeting the ferryman. I took all of the loot, which raised my status with the Reapers to a level 3 as they call it, and headed back to their hideout. After selling all of my loot to them, I was told my reputation had grown from a 2 to 14 just from that one venture, but I wanted blood. I set out again, but there was still nobody to be seen, so I went to a nearby fortress to raise my emissary level more so, hoping to invite some competition, something I would soon come to regret. I cleared through the stronghold quickly and began loading the treasure aboard my ship, but that is when I noticed it. A brigantine was heading straight for me, and I knew it was not friendly, so I prepared myself and readied my cannons for a fight I was destined to lose. Only, as they approached, I fired a warning shot onto their deck, not realising they had an explosive barrel on board, and a big one too, which I can only imagine was for me. But this instantly sunk their vessel, and I was safe for now. Foolishly, I stuck around to collect the rest of the treasure, and sooner rather than later, they were back for blood, and you can guarantee they did not make the same mistake carrying a barrel. They quickly overwhelmed me. These pirates were not ones to be messed with, and after being overthrown, my vessel and emissary status sank to the bottom of the ocean. After getting a new vessel, I attempted to get back to the fortress and collect my loot, however I was quickly met by another brigantine that refused my entry, and once again I was beaten. It's safe to say, sailing solo as a Reaper really is not for the faint-hearted, and it only gets worse from here, but each fight helped me learn something new, and I was determined to be a renowned Reaper. After fighting only with brigantines, upon spotting a solo sloop on the horizon, I knew I had to take this opportunity to go in and fight. Only, I arrived and fired upon them, and although there were 2 on board that vessel, I must have put fear into their hearts and they sailed away. I chased for far too long, and with 1 man on the wheel and 1 managing their sail, there was no way I could catch up to them solo. But that is when I noticed another one of those skull in the clouds, and after beating the Ashen Winds so easily, I was feeling confident about this one. Arriving at the island, I was met with cannon fire which I had to sail through, but eventually I was able to park close enough that they couldn't reach me. I'd love to say this was a great experience, or that I walked through it with ease, but for 2 hours I fought this. The skeletons were overwhelming. I met with the ferryman more than I'd like to admit. The whole time I was on edge, not knowing what to expect as more and more skeletal lords kept appearing. Some really big ones. And just as I didn't think it could get any worse, I was fighting an Ashen Lord and I knew how to deal with him. However, I did not know how to deal with a keg exploding on my ship. I panicked and didn't even think about somebody being close by, and as I tried to book it out the water, I was shot in the back. I had my first Tucker experience. and they couldn't have come at a worse time. I put so much work into that fort, and you can be damn sure I was filled with rage, heading straight back to the island expecting to see them with my treasures. But in fact, quite the opposite. They had gone, and I decided to carry on fighting the Skeleton Lord until he erupted into flames and a key fell onto the floor. I had beaten this place, and upon opening the door, I was met with the most treasure I had ever seen. After much hauling, the loot was aboard my ship, and although I wanted to hand this off to the Reapers, another Reaper was too close to the hideout, and I knew if he spotted me with this loot, it would all be over. So I headed to the nearest outpost and managed to sell everything. The strange man from the tavern even told me this chest was known as the Chest of Legends, and these are the types of chests that I would be wanting to look for, and I could tell then he was impressed that I had managed to acquire all of this. Feeling better about my day, I once again raised the Reaper Emissary flag, only for me to have any confidence I had shattered. As I was sailing away, 2 skeleton galleons arose either side of me with anchor balls completely surrounding me. And in an instant, I found myself straight back to the Ferry of the Damned. Feeling rather annoyed, I was once again headed back to the Reapers to raise another emissary flag, and I was starting to think maybe I wasn't worthy to fly their banner. So for a little confidence boost, I went back to clear out another fortress, sold my loot after being chased by another skeleton sloop and galleon, and to raise my emissary level, I tried to do one more fortress. However, someone snuck by and blew up my ship whilst I was doing the fortress, leaving it on fire and filling it with water, and before I had the chance to do anything, we both met the bottom of the ocean once again on this voyage. After all of this, you can bet that I was feeling tired and beat down, but a real Reaper, no matter how many times they are sunk, doesn't give up and pushes forward, so I showed myself as a servant of the flame and dived into the depths. I rose from the seas to see my foes ahead of me. They were not ready for me, and this Guardian of Fortune was about to meet their match. We sailed around each other, both exchanging blows, one after the other, and I knew they were not going down without a fight. I was determined not to give in, however a huge problem soon arose. I only had 2 cannonballs left, so I had to make a quick decision then and there, sailing straight for them and giving them no means of escape. I fired my last cannonballs into their ship and quickly jumped off and boarded their vessel. He was slowly sinking, and it was now up to me to keep him from making any repairs. I won't lie and tell you this was a cakewalk. They were a formidable foe, but in the end, it was their ship that fell. I knew that taking down a ship showing the colours of Athena had shown my worth to the Reapers, and they now knew who I was, one respected Reaper. I know this was a rough day on the seas for me, and I also know you may be thinking, how could I call this day a win? But I found an easy way to gain some reputation with the Reapers, simply by selling everything to them. Raise that Reaper flag, do some world events, and you will soon be a renowned Reaper, but you have to expect any and all kind of pirates hunting you down, and be prepared to lose everything in the process. But if you are feeling rusty with sailing, head out into the seas and battle against those Guardians of Fortune and prove to them that the flame will never die. I've been Captain Daddy, and I hope you've enjoyed this tale. And whilst you're here, why not listen to my previous story on screen now, where I dive into how to improve in PvP amongst the Sea of Thieves. But until next time, arrgh!